I want to tell you about a student I had. I am going to call him Daniel. He was in my intermediate class about 2 years ago, mid-30s, came from a professional background in his home country, very careful with his English, always polished.
I already sense where this is going.
He was so careful, so measured, that the politeness became a problem, and it took me months to realize what was happening.
What was happening?
Daniel never said when he did not understand something. Never. If I explained a grammar point and it had not landed, he would nod, slowly, write something down, move on, and I would assume he got it.
But he had not.
He had not. And the thing is, the nodding was completely convincing. He was not performing confusion or performing understanding in an obvious way. He had just learned very thoroughly that the polite thing to do when someone explains something is to thank them and move on. Asking for more was an imposition.
Where was he from?
He grew up in a context where questioning a teacher or an authority figure was genuinely considered disrespectful, not theoretically, concretely. You did not push back on an explanation. You did not ask for it again. You took what was given.
And he had brought that whole framework with him into the English classroom.
Completely intact. So for 3 months I was teaching someone who I thought was understanding me, and he was experiencing 3 months of polite incomprehension.
How did you find out?
A test he did poorly on something I was sure he understood, and something about the specific way he got it wrong told me the gap had been there for a while. Not that he had studied and forgotten, that he had never actually got the concept in the first place.
How did you handle it with him?
I asked him directly after class. Just the two of us? I said. Daniel, I want to ask you something honestly. When I explain something in class, do you sometimes feel like it has not fully landed, but you do not want to interrupt?
What did he say?
He looked at me for a long moment and said, yes, always.
Always.
Always. And then he said, I thought asking again would waste your time. I thought you would think I was not capable.
2 things. Consideration for your time and fear of judgment.
Both were real to him. Both were stopping him from getting what he came to the classroom to get.
This is not just a classroom problem.
Not at all. I have seen it in professional environments, in social situations, in medical contexts. People do not ask the question they need to ask because the asking feels like it reveals something they do not want to reveal.
The asking feels more dangerous than the not knowing.
And it is almost never true. The cost of not asking is almost always higher than the cost of asking.
Almost always. Are there cases where it is not?
Genuinely. Yes, there are environments where asking signals weakness in a way that has real consequences, not just imagined ones, certain very hierarchical workplaces, certain dynamics where someone is looking for a reason to doubt you, and in those situations the calculus is different.
A worker want.
A autocront? Check the documentation after the meeting. Find a colleague who is safe to ask, look it up yourself later. All of those are sometimes the right call.
But in most situations, most of the time, asking is fine.
Asking is fine, and often better than fine, often welcomed.
I have a version of this from my design work. Early in my freelance career, I was too polite about feedback. A client would give me notes that I knew were wrong, not wrong as in, I disagree with your taste. Wrong as in, if we do this, the project will not achieve what you told me you wanted, and I would do what they said anyway.
Because it was their project.
Because it was their project and they were paying, and it felt like my job to deliver what was asked, not to push back on what was asked.
How did that work out?
Badly, because when the project did not achieve what they had wanted, they were disappointed, and I could not say, well, I told you this was the wrong direction, because I had not told them, I had just done it.
You protected them from your honest view, and then they were unprotected from the consequence of not having it.
That is a precise way to put it.
There is an expression in English for this, a false kindness, the kindness of not saying the difficult thing which feels kind in the moment, but is actually a disservice.
I learned to say it slowly and with a lot of awkwardness at first, something like, I want to flag something before we move forward. I am not sure this direction will get us to the goal you described at the beginning of the project. Can we talk about that for a moment?
not, "You are wrong," not, "I disagree." But I want to flag something. Can we talk about that?
That framing invites a conversation rather than declaring a conflict. And most clients, once they understood I was trying to protect the work, became grateful for it.
Not all of them.
Not all of them. Some people do not want their decisions questioned, and I have learned to read that early. But they are rarer than you think.
Let us go back to Daniel for a moment, because there is something I want to name about the cultural dimension, because I think it is real and important, and it does not get talked about clearly enough.
Say it.
The English-speaking professional and educational environment operates with a set of assumptions about what is appropriate behavior that are not universal. Asking questions is assumed to be good. Challenging an explanation is assumed to be engagement. Saying "I do not understand" is assumed to be intellectual honesty rather than incompetent.
But those assumptions are specific to certain cultural contexts.
Very specific. And someone moving into an English-speaking environment from a context where those norms are different is not wrong for having different instincts. They have just not been given the information that the rules are different here.
And no one tells you that directly.
No one tells you that directly. You are expected to infer it, which you cannot do if your whole framework for what respectful behavior looks like is pointing somewhere else.
So what Daniel needed was not just permission to ask. He needed the information that asking was expected.
That in this context, asking was not an imposition. It was doing the work correctly.
How did he change after that conversation?
Slowly. It is not a light switch. He had 35 years of a particular relational pattern. You cannot undo that with one conversation.
But something shifted.
Something shifted. He started asking quietly at first, one question per class, then more. And here's the interesting thing. His English improved faster in the 3 months after that conversation than it had in the 3 months before, because he was actually getting information rather than collecting polite incomprehension.
The asking was the learning.
The asking was the learning.
There is a phrase in English that I have always found interesting. Do not suffer in silence. It means, do not endure a difficulty without saying anything about it. And I think about it in the context of English learning specifically, because a lot of the suffering that happens around language is exactly that kind. Silent, internal, invisible to everyone else.
You feel like you are the only one not following when actually there are 3 other people in the room also not following, also too polite to say so.
And if one person asked, it would be a relief to everyone.
That person is almost always considered generous rather than weak. They did the thing everyone needed someone to do.
The courage to ask is sometimes a gift to the whole room.
Not just to yourself.
Not just to yourself.
Daniel, wherever he is, I hope he is asking questions.
I think he is.
Here is where we leave you. Think of something you have been too polite to say in English, a question you did not ask, a disagreement you did not express, a confusion you performed your way through. What was the cost of not saying it?
I want to bring in something that connects to what you said about the rules being different here, because I think there is a specific version of this that affects people learning English who grew up in cultures where harmony in a group is valued very highly.
What do you mean by harmony?
The idea that the group staying comfortable together matters more than any individual getting what they need. So if saying something would create awkwardness or tension, you do not say it. Even if not saying it costs you something.
That value is real and it is not irrational. In certain contexts, keeping the group cohesive is genuinely the most important thing. It protects relationships. It protects the collective.
That in a language learning context, or a professional context where you need to advocate for yourself, that same value can work directly against you.
Because the individual thing you are not saying is your own understanding, your own needs, your own perspective.
And you can be so practiced at putting those aside that you stop noticing when you are doing it.
I have watched this in classrooms. The students who come from backgrounds with a very high value on group harmony often wait for a consensus before they speak. They watch the room, they sense what the acceptable answer is, and then contribute something close to it. They are very skilled at reading what is expected.
Which is actually a kind of social intelligence.
A sophisticated one, but it means they are often not saying what they actually think, which means they are not getting feedback on what they actually think, which means they are not growing as quickly as someone who is willing to be wrong out loud.
There is something uncomfortable about that conclusion.
There is, because it suggests that certain cultural habits that are genuinely valuable in some contexts can be a genuine disadvantage in others. And I do not want to say your culture is wrong. Adopt ours. That is not what I mean.
What do you mean?
I mean, you are entering a space that has different rules, and you can observe those rules in that space without abandoning who you are outside of it. You can be someone who values harmony and also someone who, in an English classroom or an English-speaking professional meeting, asks the question they need to ask.
Context switching.
Not abandoning, switching, knowing which rules apply, where.
That is a skill in itself.
An important one, and one that gets easier with practice.
Let us talk about some specific language for the moments when you need to say something you have been holding back, because it is one thing to understand that you should speak. It is another to have the actual words.
The hardest version, saying you did not understand something that you pretended to understand at the time.
Which requires more courage than asking in the moment, because now you are also admitting that you performed understanding when you did not have it.
The language for that. I want to revisit something we covered earlier. I realize I was not as clear on it as I thought. Could we go back to the point about blank? Or, I have been thinking about what you said, and I want to make sure I understood it correctly. Could you clarify blank for me?
Both of those protect the other person's face. They do not say, I lied about understanding. They say, I have been thinking and I want to do better.
The intention reads as diligent rather than deceptive.
For the version where you disagree with a decision but have been staying quiet, I have been going back and forth on whether to raise this. I think I should. I have a concern about blank. Is this a good moment to mention it?
Asking permission to raise the concern is a very soft entry. It signals that you have thought carefully about whether to say it at all, which is respectful without being deferential.
And it almost always gets a yes. People are generally willing to hear a concern that has been framed this way.
For the version where you have simply been too quiet for too long in a group, I have been listening and I want to add something. Or, I have been holding back on this, but I think it is worth saying.
Both of those acknowledge the silence before breaking it, which makes the contribution feel considered rather than intrusive.
There's an important thing about timing here. The longer you wait to say something, the harder it becomes. Every moment of silence adds weight. The thing you did not say an hour ago feels much larger than it would have if you had said it in the moment.
So the practical advice is, say it early, before the silence has mass.
Say it early, even if what you say is imperfect. Even if the English is not the smoothest version of what you want to express, an imperfect, honest contribution is worth more than a polished silence.
Much more.
Daniel knew the grammar. His English was genuinely good, but he was giving me silence where he needed to give me questions, and the silence was costing him the thing he had come to the classroom for.
The most eloquent silence is still silence.
Exactly that.
I want to end on something that might feel slightly counterintuitive given everything we have said today. Silence is not always wrong. Sometimes the most precise response is to say nothing.
There is a difference between silence that is a choice and silence that is a fear.
Chosen silence has weight. It communicates something. It is a response.
Fear-based silence is not a response. It is an absence where a response should be.
Knowing the difference in yourself is the work.
When you feel the silence coming on, ask yourself, am I choosing this or am I avoiding something?
And if you are avoiding, what is the smallest version of what you need to say?
Start there.
Here is where we leave you. Think of something you've been too polite to say in English. Not a dramatic confession, just a question you have not asked, a concern you have not raised, a moment where you nodded when you needed to speak. What would it take to say it?
We will see you tomorrow.
Take good care.